Hello, critics, non-critics, and friends. Welcome to the Film Optix podcast, where we take a glance into blockbusters, indie films, and everything in between. I'm your host, Christian, and as always, I'm joined by my partner in film, Devin, and today we're here to give our spoiler reactions to Season 1 of X-Men 97. It's good to be back. It's been a crazy week on my side. Sorry for the bit of a delay with, our episodes, but, life happens and moving sucks. It really, really sucks. But before we begin today's episode, you can listen to our podcast on podcast platforms around the internet. That includes Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and more. And if you are a new or seasoned listener to the show, we would love to hear from you guys. Follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and Threads at Film Optix. That is Optix with an X. Or you can email us at filmoptix@gmail.com for any movie-related questions. Devin, what's going on? How's your week been? It feels like it's been a while since we released an episode. I want to say it's been since... the 14th. So it's been a few days, but what's been on your dockets as of life, as of itself? What's been going on with you?
Bonjour, mon ami. That's my bandit impression. Good to be back at it. I know we skipped Strangers. That was because of me. That was by my request. I'll take the blame for that one. But I think I might have dodged a bullet. I know you might feel otherwise.
It was all right. If you've seen the other ones, you've seen this one. But hey, this is your payback because I dodged Night Swim.
This is true. I guess we're even now.
we get one per year. We're like, I'm not really feeling that. But yeah, Strangers. Woof. It's not. I mean, I'm hoping it gets better. I'm hoping the next two chapters, they do something a little bit different because this one was just basically more of the same. I will say people are saying that the survival skills of these people are terrible, but they're like people from Oregon. They don't really scream, they have survival experience, but it's nothing to talk about. Honestly, it was basically a 2008 version again. But yeah, it is what it is. But what have you been watching lately since we've been on, like a 9-day break, essentially? It feels like a month has gone by when it really hasn't. But what have you been watching lately?
I haven't really been watching much, to be honest. I've definitely been playing a couple of games. I've been deep in Hades 2. Can't get enough of that. And then I've also started up Ghost of Tsushima. I'm a few hours in. It's pretty great so far.
Oh, that's right. This is your first time playing Ghost of Tsushima. How are you liking it so far? You're having a good time?
It's very, very crispy combat. I like it.
Mm-hmm. Honestly, it's like, we've had Ghost of Tsushima for a while, but then Assassin's Creed is coming out with that Japan Assassin's game, which people have been asking for like decades. Like, I remember me and Jared talking about it when like Assassin's Creed 2 came out. We're like, oh, they should do one in Japan. And Ubisoft's like, we're not going to do one in Japan. And now we're finally getting one. And I'm interested because I do want to check out that game, but I need to wait for reviews before just saying, shut up and give my money over. But I'm glad that you're enjoying Ghost of Tsushima. I don't blame you for not watching anything new because come June, there's going to be a lot to watch.
Yeah, we need this break before June takes over our lives.
Yeah, it depends on what we're going to. This is going to be crazy. We thought that when House of the Dragon Season 1 and Rings of Power and She-Hulk are running all at the same time, it's going to be like that, but worse, because you have to add in another show. We have House of the Dragon Season 2, The Boys, we have Star Wars Acolyte, and The Bear coming up. That's a lot. So we're going to cover what we can cover, but I don't expect us to cover everything because we will literally drive ourselves crazy. If we're able to do it, that's awesome. If not, it just depends. It really just depends. But I'm glad that you're having a good time playing Ghost of Tsushima. I haven't picked it up for PC yet, but I'm hoping that I can once it hits a sale because I already have it on PlayStation. So maybe we'll just have to wait and see. But I'm waiting on that Paper Mario to come out. Very excited for that. Very, very excited for that. But yeah, same thing on my side, man. I mean, moving. So I haven't really watched anything new. Just been watching some reruns of How I Met Your Mother, and that's pretty much it. But enough chitter chatter. We can talk about this all day. This is like our catch up period. As we mentioned before, we're going to be giving our spoiler free thoughts and opinions of X-Men 97 season 1. The season finale hit about a week ago. It's time for us to talk about it. It's time for us to talk about that. And we also watched what's it called? Assembled or Avengers Assembled. It's like the making of
Marvel Assembled. It is kind of funny that it's called X-Men Assembled when that's obviously the Avengers thing.
I think Marvel Assembled is like the new brand name, if I'm not like mistaken. That's like what they're using for everything, if that makes any sense. Like everything moving forward Marvel wise.
Yeah, but I mean, it comes from Avengers, obviously.
Yeah, it comes from Avengers. But yeah, Disney's been doing a lot of that for like in the makings of, for like not even just their Marvel content, but like for Percy Jackson as well, Star Wars. I think it's really cool how they do that. It's almost like it's like the extra DVD content you would expect of these shows actually were on Blu-ray. And I fully expect X-Men 97 to come out on Blu-ray. It has to. But I'm getting ahead of myself here. Without further delay, we'll be right back after this introduction to X-Men 97 Season 1.
I need to tell you something, and I need you not to judge me too harshly. Or tell Scott.
You have my word, Jean.
There are times when I think about the baby, his future, and if he's a mutant, how do I tell him he's different? That the world will remind him of it every day. That he must always be careful, always be on guard, or else...
You wish him to be born human. I have wondered what it would be like to be human. It is a tempting daydream. But then I remember how my mutant gifts brought me to this mansion, to this family, to a sister.
Thank you, Storm. Just ever since I was in Gyric's mind, I can't shake this feeling that something terrible is coming. Boy, do I sound like a fool.
No, Jean. You sound like a mother.
And we are back with our X-Men 97 Season 1 spoiler-free review. This show is incredible. The creators, Bo DeMaio, Stan Lee, of course, is on there as a credit, as well as Jack Kirby, and many others were able to make this possible. And after watching In the Making of X-Men 97, I have like an even new, more found appreciation for the show than what I originally did. And, it stars a lot of like some new and old actors or voice actors coming back. You have George Buza playing as the Beast. You have Cal Dodd coming back playing as Wolverine. It's in Lenore Zan coming back to play as Rogue or Rouge, however you want to pronounce it. I know some people say Rouge, but we're going to go with Rogue because we're Americans here. But yeah, even some new faces like Matthew Watterson playing Magneto or voicing Magneto. And of course, Allison Seeley Smith coming back to play as Storm. I love this. It makes more sense as to why Storm sounds the way she does because of her voice actor. And I absolutely love it. But I'm getting ahead of myself here again. Devin, I'm going to pass it over to you so you can give your initial reactions to Season 1 of X-Men 97.
Yeah, going into this one, obviously, I think we were both pretty excited because we had both just binged the original 90s series and kind of gotten familiar with that and kind of fallen in love with the characters and just the setup of the show. So then when this is coming out, we were just ready, I think. And then it comes out and it really just blows everyone's expectations out of the water, really, because I think people were excited, but people were kind of in a similar way to Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, where there's just like some skepticism, like can they really live up to the hype? They just have such big shoes to fill, but they really just nailed it here. They did a perfect job of updating the animation to where it does use current technology. it is very nice looking and it's great to look at, but it still keeps that kind of charm that the original had, where the characters all for the most part look pretty much the same, like their models and their faces all pretty much the same. It's just all the action and the animation they can do around them is what is updated, and they've enhanced that so greatly. And I think that kind of lends to some great storytelling here. And I think the story that we get through season 1, it's just a masterclass for the most part. I mean, just the journey we go through with all these characters and balancing all these characters throughout every episode. Like, there's just so many characters, and they all get, for the most part, they all get their moments throughout the series and the season. And they did such a good job of that. And just the 3-part finale was great to lead up to, and then having each of those episodes feel pretty equally like heavy and kind of important, and then they all nailed it pretty equally, I would say. And it just sets up so much more for season 2, and there's just so much to love with these characters. It's just crazy how perfectly they nailed the feeling of the show while updating it and modernizing it.
I agree. And like you said, there's a lot of skepticism with this because there's a lot of franchises that are not being remade or revisited, or this is being revisited, but this is like a reboot or more of a continuation. I guess you can call it a reboot because it is continuing exactly where the previous season of X-Men ended in the 90s. Of course, hence why this is called X-Men 97. But like you said, with Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, we were all skeptical because it's like the prequel trilogy and even the original Planet of the Apes movies are just so beloved. And I feel like there's always going to be that skepticalness of it where it's like, can they pull this off? And I think X-Men 97 does it perfectly. And they mentioned this in the making of documentary that's on Disney Plus. Their goal was to not have it in a 90s time capsule because it's darn near impossible to recreate something that trend is no longer around, where it's like, okay, the original X-Men show debuted like Saturday mornings, and it's like you could try to recreate that with Disney Plus, but like that's part of a culture, our culture, like of like 90s and early 2000s kids. That doesn't exist anymore. Streaming has changed so much, technology has changed so much, and I think they did a great job of giving us a continuation of a show that doesn't feel like it's in a 90s capsule or time capsule. Because I remember when we had first started rewatching the show all the way through, because the show was ending as we were getting old enough to understand and like watch television. So we watched a lot of reruns of the original show, but I'd never seen it all the way through. But I think what we were talking about earlier, like a few weeks ago, we were talking about how cheesy it was. You know, it's that 90s flair where Rogue has like her little sayings and whatnot. Like she's like this sassy, like Southern belle almost. And it's like, you know.
And the screams. Oh my God, the screams. I don't ever want to hear those again.
Yeah, the screams were crazy, but it's like, you know, when you think about it, like they only had so much to work with. They had to reuse a lot of animation.
Yeah, I didn't realize that they were really like left hanging after season 1. Like they had no idea if they were even going to keep going after watching the assembled episode on it.
And that's the beauty of a show like X-Men 97. It's come so far to where, you know, back in the 90s, we didn't have the internet, or we, in a way we did, but it's not as prominent and it's not as common as it is today, where it's like, you know, we were around when dial-up internet was around, and then we grew up during the birth of wireless internet. So it's like all the fan mail and like the amount of people who love this show, especially for X-Men 97, how they were able to pull this off and continue what makes the X-Men, what makes this band of heroes so beloved even to this day. And everyone, like, what was the first thing when Disney acquired Marvel? Everyone was like, oh my gosh, we need the X-Men stat. Like, that was the first thing that people wanted from Marvel Studios.
And then that was the Marvel executive. He said the first thing he pitched when Disney Plus was announced was a revival of of X-Men.
And it's like, why not? Like, it's the freaking X-Men. It's amazing. And I love the show so much. There's so many crescendos that happen in this series. And I will say sometimes it does feel like a little bit too much is going on because there's a lot of story threads that are interwoven within each other. And it feels like, everything that happened with Storm losing her powers and then getting it back. And then everything happening between Rogue and Magneto. And then Wolverine, and of course with with the Raging Cajun himself, with Gambit, it's like there's so much that happens, and I want to go back and rewatch it to be like, now I can properly watch it without worrying about, what to look for, what not to look for. And there's a lot of great cameos in this show as well, because it shows that Marvel's doing this separation thing, which I really love, where they're doing, they have Marvel Studios, which is film, Marvel Animation, and then I think it's Marvel TV Studios, or if I'm not mistaken. But you know what I'm talking about, right? And they also have like the Marvel Spotlight. So it's kind of like they're separating everything, and kind of giving them more categorized things as to, okay, what's connected here and what's not connected elsewhere. Does that make sense?
Yeah, they can have a more singular focus on just creating within those divisions instead of having to interconnect every single thing.
Yeah, and that's what I love about what they're doing so far. But with X-Men 97, it's like, dude, every single episode, 10 episodes, every single one of them hit. And that's an anomaly when it comes to a television show like this. Because usually you're going to have a few lull episodes, and that's normal for television. Like Game of Thrones had their fair share. Seinfeld had their fair share. Community had their fair share of lull episodes where not much is really happening, or it's like, man, that wasn't like the best episode. But 10 episodes for Marvel Animation for X-Men 97.
And we just got to talk about the quality of the animation, I feel like, because I feel like it's kind of been, I've seen a lot on Twitter where people are saying like, all right, Invincible, you kind of got to step your game up here, because this is what animation in a superhero genre really should be looking like. And it's just kind of like, not necessarily hating on Invincible, but just like, hey, like, we love you too, but maybe you should kind of maybe step things up a bit, because this is just a whole new level of what action, like, animation can look like.
I agree. I will say, I feel like, Invincible obviously is another great animated superhero show. In a way, I feel like it's a little bit different, but I do know what you mean, because after experiencing X-Men 97 and then looking back on especially what took season 2 so long for Invincible to hit, it's kind of like, okay, we have to wait this long for part 1 and then a little bit longer for part 2. For Invincible season 2, it's like, okay, like it's gonna pay off, and in a way it did. But that season 2 really hurt itself because it was released in 2 parts, and I loved what we saw, but it's like, I think for the time that we waited for season 2 to even come out, it's like, okay, what have you been working on? Because obviously X-Men 97, this is what, God, like 5-6 years into Disney Plus almost. And we're finally getting X-Men 97. Of course, Disney had to buy Fox first in order for all of that to happen. But I do agree, when it's like you're looking at something like X-Men 97, I would like to see a little bit more action oriented or more stylized content, or a stylized art substance or stylized substance coming from Invincible, because they can definitely pull it off. And we've seen it with Adam Eve, the standalone special. Like, that was some of the best animation I've ever seen in my life. That was one of the best superhero stories I've ever seen, or its specials. But now you see X-Men, it's like, wow, I thought the animation is beautiful. I love the contrast. It just pops. It feels like a cartoon. It feels like a Saturday morning cartoon almost. And it's like the things they were able to pull off just within the first episode, and, everything after Gambit's death and leading up to Gambit's death and everything after. It's like, this is why animation, in my mind, is like the best medium to tell superhero stories like this. I love live action, don't get me wrong, but there's something about the organic nature of turning, obviously, X-Men, based off of comics. It's more of an organic evolution.
You just have so much more freedom.
That too. And I'm not sure if you've seen like The Legend of Vox Machina, which is on Amazon Prime as well. I actually think they have, I think their animation style their animation style is a tier above Invincible, if I'm being honest, because there's a lot of great fights in that as well. And it looks beautiful. But when you're talking about for comics, it's like, yeah, we have live action adaptations, but it feels like a more natural progression or a natural evolution to have, okay, you have these comic books that are obviously hand drawn or drawn, digitally or hand drawn, however, depending on the era. And then moving that over to a television animated, it just feels like a more natural progression. And it's like, this is what it's all about. X-Men 97 is that show where like I want to go back and rewatch the entire season, and I just might because it's that stinking good.
It really is crazy. Just like the keep talking about the roller coaster of the MCU. Like MCU is so back after this, and it's never ending up and down. Like people just can't just have a couple of subpar entries into the MCU and just Marvel in general. It just has to be like hit after hit, and obviously this was a huge hit, and it brought the entire pop culture like lexicon back into the world of X-Men, and everyone, I think like widely renowned. Everyone loved this one. I didn't really see much negativity about this one.
Yeah, I saw a few people, on the streets of like Twitter and stuff. I'm still not calling it X. It's like the dumbest name ever. But I saw a few people who weren't super crazy about it, but it's like, how could you not be crazy about it? Like, if it's not your type of animation style, that's totally fine. I think like the new Transformers 1 or whatever it is, I do not care for that animation style whatsoever. It's just like, it just doesn't do it for me, but someone else may think it's awesome. But for X-Men 97, I think it's beautiful. And what they mentioned in the making of documentary for the series, how even it's beautiful how the original series and even X-Men 97, like obviously it's geared towards children, but it doesn't talk down to its audience. Even now for X-Men 97, it still does not talk down to its audience as if they don't understand what's going on because of what the X-Men represent. They are an allegory for so many different injustices and just discrimination of like race, gender, and what have you. It's like, it's the perfect mixture of just, it's a perfect reflection of our world. And I think that's why it works so well. But even with X-Men 97, it's like anyone can watch this and just be amazed at what they were able to pull off. But I have a question for you, and I mentioned it a little bit earlier, but I have a question for you here because there's been a few people talking, mainly people that I've been talking to about the show. Do you blame Rogue for Gambit's death?
I don't blame Rogue for Gambit dying. I think the events that unfolded at Genosha were going to happen no matter what.
Yeah, see, that's what I'm thinking. And of course, I was going back and forth with a few friends about it, and they 100% blame Rogue. And I'm like, okay, let's pump the brakes there. Because they're like, oh, well, she was like messing around with Magneto, and, that's technically the only person she can be with physically.
If anything, Professor X is getting a lot of the blame for this entire season and what unfolded. Like, he just kind of was off planet doing his own thing and selfishly wasn't there when they needed him. And then when they did need him, he kind of just shrugged initially.
Yeah, and I think that's a perfect. I think that's a perfect point. I would definitely blame Professor X because no matter how good intention he is, there comes a certain point in time where you have to change tactics as to what's working and what isn't. Professor X tactics may have worked better during the beginning, but after Magneto taking over the X-Men and, Rogue even essentially switching sides and her like killing, was it Bolivar Trask? I believe it was. And just kind of just going rogue on her own.
Yeah, literally.
No pun intended.
Battling Captain America.
Yeah, throwing that shield. He said,
yeeting the shield.
yeeting the shield like no shield has ever been yeeted before. But yeah, it's crazy, and it's like you really think about it, and it's one of those where Magneto isn't a villain; he's more of just a anti. I guess you can call him an anti-hero.
Hashtag Magneto was right.
Magneto was right. Yeah, I was just about to get to that. Like he was, and my gosh, his speech during I think it was episode 1 or 2.
Yeah, that was only like episode 2. I think that was way back when.
I think it was episode 2 where he brings up like the entire. I think it was like the U.S. or like I think it was the UN board, and that speech he gave where he was just like, he's like, I'm not forcing you to like our kind, but you need to understand that this is shared world. I can't remember exactly what he said verbatim, but it was such a beautiful speech, and I was like, I will follow this man to the ends of the earth. I will follow Magneto to the ends of the earth. And the things that he's done for mutant kind, especially Leech, or is it Screech?
I think it's
Leech. That was heartbreaking. That was so heartbreaking. And it's like, to understand where Magneto came from, it's like he makes more sense than Thanos. He just does. Yeah. And I was like, oh, I love Magneto even more. Like I've always loved him as a character, but it's like, I believe the Matthew Watterson, he has taken over as the new Magneto for the voice acting, and it's so freaking brilliant, and I just absolutely loved it. And watching the Assembled documentary with Alison Seeley Smith, and she's been voicing Storm since the 90s, and it's like she loves the theater, and it's like that's why Storm has this like poise type of persona about her, and I'm like, this is amazing. I absolutely love it. I loved it so much, and I think everyone should go watch the Marvel Assembled for the making of X-Men 97. Because it just goes into so much depth as to, what happened with season 1 and then coming back for season 2. And most of these voice actors are Canadian, which is pretty awesome. And I actually did not know that, which is pretty sweet. So it's just like what the show has meant to them over the years, and being exposed to how the original series and X-Men 97 has touched so many people's lives.
Yeah, it was like a perfect blend. It was a perfect blend of the returning actors and then the new actors, and then within the new actors, some of them who had been fans of the original series and loved it, and it kind of inspired them, and they were using that as inspiration the entire time for this series. And then even some new actors who had never seen the original and kind of looked back on it and studied up on the original performances. It's just kind of cool to blend those all together.
Yeah, I believe Ross Marquand, he voices Professor X. I think he was one of the few who had never seen the show.
Yeah, he had been a big fan. He mentioned that he loved it, and then it was also
it might have been someone else. Maybe it was Gambit's.
It was Cyclops. It was Cyclops who hadn't seen it. Gambit was actually the one who said that he named himself Remy LeBeau during French class in high school.
That's right. Yeah. I watched it early this morning. It's only 55 minutes long. So it's like, it's perfect. It just gives you such a newfound appreciation for the original show. And I'm not sure if you noticed this, Devin, but I know Mr. Sinister is like one of your favorite characters. So in the original show, like he doesn't have like almost any, like, they couldn't animate him originally because he has like that giant cape. I'm not sure if you noticed that, but it's like, it's literally just like his arms moving. Like he never does like any backflips or anything like that.
No, I never noticed.
I'll have to find the tweet exactly what it was talking about, but they said that the animation back then for him specifically was so hard that this man never like does any kind of like action stuff. He's very stationary in how he moves, but I'll have to find that tweet and show it to you. Or I think it was an article. It was hilarious. It was something along those lines, but.
Well, he always had his team of goons with him.
Dude, Mr. Sinister coming back, Cable, like his identity being the.
Yeah, a lot more Cable in this season than in the original.
Do you think that was like their plan all along, was to have Cable be the son of Cyclops and Jean Grey? Also, Do you have a theory of when Jean Grey got switched? Because I'm still trying to figure it out. I don't know when it happened exactly.
I think I saw it's pretty much just based on like her hairstyle. Like whenever her hair is like up in that, and then she has like that headband on, like that's the real Jean Grey. But then there's a certain point where that switches, and then it's Madeline Pryor.
Yeah, and that Madeline Pryor was fantastic. Yeah, such a short-lived character, but my gosh, like even when it was Madeline during the beginning of, I think it was episode 1, where she's talking about motherhood and talking with Storm and how, she was hoping that her son secretly just isn't a mutant, so that their son could at least have a better life than them, because that's what being a parent is all about, is like having, wanting what's best for your children, for things that you didn't have. And then at the same time, Storm's like, it's a gift to have something like this. But then Storm losing her powers and showing how that affected her. And it's like, it's more than just an ability. Like it's you, it's your identity. It becomes an extension of yourself. And you see that with Storm, and it's just like, she's just so heartbroken that like she has lost her connection to what makes her, like, like her connection to the weather and whatnot. It was, oh gosh, it was terrible, but it's like, it's so well written. It's so well written. It's amazing.
Who was your favorite character this season?
Dude, that's so tough. I've always loved Beast as a character, but I think it's got to be Magneto or even Rogue, because it's like, Morph didn't have too much to do because they brought him back, and it's like he's kind of there in the background. But I think it's a tie between Magneto and Rouge. But like, I never really cared for Cyclops previously, but like Cyclops is awesome as well. But I would probably have to go with Magneto.
I think Cyclops is mine, because with X-Men that we grew up with, like the movies that we grew up with, Cyclops was
and X-Men Evolution.
Yeah, Cyclops was nothing. Like, he's just a nothing character. He's just kind of the Boy Scout leader that no one really likes. But this season like changed everything. Like, they made him such a more interesting character, and they gave him so much more background than he ever got before. He gets the respect he deserves here, and I think just that family dynamic that we got with him and Jean Grey and Cable, just their kind of adventures together. Those are some of my favorite parts too, when they rode the Summers Mobile and were kind of just fighting crime together as a nice little family.
No, it's very true. Like, I mean, like you said, when we're growing up, it's like Cyclops was really just put out to the wayside. But like in the comics, like, and even in the original TV show, like Cyclops, he's like the leader of the X-Men. But it quickly shifted towards Wolverine, especially for us growing up. It's like we had X-Men and the Wolverine, and then, we had the X-Men Evolution, where Wolverine was more the forefront. And even in the live action X-Men movies, and even like Days of Future Past, and you've gotten so much more backstory and attention for Wolverine over Cyclops. Because, like you said, Cyclops is nothing. Even in X-Men Dark Phoenix, he's just there. He doesn't do anything. They're like, oh yeah, Cyclops is there. He's the guy who can shoot laser out of his eyes. But like, it's deeper than that, because it's like this man is like so tried and true. Like Scott Summers, it's like he is a Boy Scout, like you said, but it's like he's the most morally straight person you can ever meet, but you can never truly look him in the eye.
They also finally like nailed his powers in this one, like the concussive blast, like the way they used it throughout. Like, he had used it as a landing pad at one point, and then just like his ultra blast at the end.
Dude, don't get me started. Him and Bishop, and he had to like charge Bishop up, and like that was so cool. But that's what I'm talking about. It's like they're finally able to do so many things with X-Men that they weren't able to do before. And it's like, you can never really truly pull that off in the 90s, because like we were talking about, there's so much reused animation, and it's like, it's just the technology was limited back then. So there wasn't a lot that they could do, but they made the most of what they could do. And even like the theme song and the intro, I believe one of the creators, he said that they made like 12 different, he said originally it was like 2-3 minutes, but it's like a minute long, and it's like, you know, he just kept drawing and drawing, and it's like it's better to have more material to work with than none at all. But yeah, it's like they weren't able to do much with Cyclops in the original series, and it's like that's like the best adaptation we've ever gotten of the X-Men. You would think that they could probably pull that off in live action, but they just didn't. They're like, yeah, Cyclops is there. We're going to focus on Jean Grey and Wolverine, but the Cyclops is kind of just the third wheel in this challengers situation between Cyclops, Jean Grey, and Wolverine.
It's kind of reversed here, where Wolverine takes a bit of a backseat in this series until obviously the end, where he gets gets the old skeleton ripped out.
Dude, because I always wondered, I was like, can't Magneto just control Wolverine like at any points? And they finally did it. I'm like, I wonder why they've never done that before, like even the live action. I'm like, it would probably be way too gruesome, because that's like literally like his skeleton is coated in antimonium. So it's like, I was like, man, I'm like, if they could do that, that'd be awesome. And then it finally happened. I was like, yes, but it looks so gross and disgusting. I was so excited. But man, oh man, this show is just so gosh darn good. And we could talk about this all day, but I'll pass it back over to you, Devin. Do you have any final thoughts, anything you wanted to touch on before we get into our final thoughts and our ratings for this season?
Yeah, I think the one thing, like kind of one negative I can see with the entire show, it's not really necessarily the creator's fault. More so, I would blame Marvel on this one, but we don't really know what happened to the creator of the show, Bo DeMaio. He was fired like the week of the premiere, which everyone was kind of confused about, and no one really ever got an answer for it, because he currently, I believe, he has already written season 2, so that's already in effect and already being put in place. Like, it's still his story moving forward, and we just don't really know what happened. He just kind of got axed. Like, obviously, if he did something horribly wrong, then that's that. But I feel like that would have come out by now, because there's the whole OnlyFans rumor, but we don't really know anything about that. It's just kind of a weird situation to be in with such a like an amazing show, to have the creator just be. He is very active on Twitter. I've seen him talk about the show like every week. That's
awesome, though. Yeah, it's great that he's still, you know, he's still being like transparent or communicating with fans. But yeah, I don't know what happened at all. I mean, Disney, heck, they had to let James Gunn go, and then they brought him back for, you know, not one but 2 projects, for the Guardians of the Galaxy holiday special and for Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. It's like they had to let him go per protocol, then they brought him back. I don't really know, but all I know is that Disney does not mess around with that stuff. They do hold people accountable. So I'm not sure what it is. Maybe it is the OnlyFans thing, but like you said, that hasn't really been confirmed. So it's like, I wonder what it is, but I guess only time will tell altogether. But let's get into our final thoughts and our ratings here. Devin, what are your final thoughts for X-Men 97, and what would you rate season 1? And what would you like to see happen in season 2?
Yeah, final thoughts. I think this is a perfect way to reboot and re-energize a franchise, and also reintroduce a franchise to a whole new group of fans that have never really grown up on X-Men and have that in their lives, because it's just the perfect way to just give a boost to a franchise that people have been wanting for so long. And as someone who has recently watched the original series, I know you have as well, that it just kind of gives that extra oomph watching this series. It makes an already amazing show just that much better, having that background. So I definitely would recommend at least going back and watching some of it if you are really interested, because it builds on that in a great way. And I think the animation is great, the characters are great, the writing is great. There really just is not much to complain about. I feel like it's right there. I think I just have to give the score 97.
Nice.
I mean,
yeah,
you have to.
Yeah, no, you really have to. I'm definitely in spirit of it being X-Men 97. I'm also going to give it a score of 97, because I feel like our negatives of the show, just the small gripes that we have, like for me at least, it's just they did bounce around a little bit, because I do know people who were like, they were following along, but it's like they felt like there was like all these big crescendo moments. But like that's how the original show is as well, where it's like it's so serialized where, even the very first episode of the OG X-Men, where it's like, it's like a 2-parter. So it's like, oh, like stay tuned for next week to find out what's happening with Jubilee. 'Cause she's really like the gateway, or like the person that you follow introducing the X-Men. But yeah, I would give X-Men 97 a 97 out of 100. I love the show so much. The animation is king when it comes to telling stories like this. They would never be able to pull this off in live action. It is an anomaly and a blessing, and just, it's amazing how they were able to pull this off. I don't think I expected the show to be this good, but this is like the best Marvel content or Marvel storytelling we've gotten since like Avengers Endgame, or like Spider-Man No Way Home, just in general, where it's like everyone's on board with this, and I hope they continue this. I hope we get to see a continuation of Spider-Man the animated series as well, because he does make a few appearances, one in suit as Spider-Man and one with Mary Jane. As this is all happening, because those universes are connected. We got a little glimpse of Iron Man, Captain America as well. My boy Nightcrawler, he's probably like my favorite mutant just overall, just like collectively between everything. I love Nightcrawler so much. Even playing like the X-Men video games growing up. I think one was called like Marvel Nemesis or X-Men Nemesis or something like that. I can't think of the exact title of it, but it was fantastic. I played as Nightcrawler all day. And that awesome scene, really quick, where we actually see what it looks like when Kurt, when he teleports, when Wolverine's like pulled in with him when they're fighting an enemy. That was classy AF. I absolutely loved it. But I could sit here and talk about this all day. I'm going to wrap up here. Devin gave X-Men 97 a 97 out of 100, and I did as well. So the official podcast score for X-Men 97 is going to be a 97 out of 100. And with all that said, that does conclude today's episode. If you enjoyed what you heard on today's episode, please make sure to subscribe to our podcast on your preferred podcast platform of choice. Make sure to follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Threads at Film Optix. That is Optix with an X. And don't forget to share an episode of our podcast with a fellow movie lover in need, whether it be your mother, your brother, or your significant other. Spread the love for the Film Optix podcast. And now let's take a sneak peek of what's coming up next on the show. So after this, we're going to be talking some Furiosa. That's like the next big movie that we're going to be talking about here on the show. Sadly, we will not be giving any attention to Chris Pratt and or Garfield, because I could not be any less interested in that movie. I might just go see it altogether. But I forgot to tell you, Devin, I saw If the other weekend. I did. I went to go see it unintentionally. It was okay.
Yeah, a little iffy.
It was a little, it was more mid, more so than anything else. But as I mentioned, we are going to be covering Furiosa here within the next week, so definitely keep an eye out for that. There's a lot of stuff happening in June, like we said, a lot of TV to cover. We're going to try to cover what we can. We can't make too many promises altogether, but I know we are for sure going to be covering season 4 of The Boys. I know that for sure. Possibly we can do season 3 for The Bear, but we'll just have to wait and see, because there's also Acolyte coming out and House of the Dragon. I don't know if Devin wants to do season 2 of House of the Dragon, but we'll see. But if we do end up covering all 4 shows, we are just going to wait until the season finale to do each one, because that's a lot of episodes to do on a weekly basis, and we simply just can't do it, especially now with all these other amazing movies coming out this year. So it's going to be a TV-filled summer coming up in June. So like I said, we're going to try to cover things such as Star Wars Acolyte, The Boys Season 4, The Bear Season 3, and possibly House of the Dragon Season 2. It all just depends on what other movies are coming out. So just stay tuned, because at least you'll have some of those to look forward to. But with all that said, thank you all for listening. If you enjoy the show, please take a moment to leave us a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And stay connected with us by following us on Twitter, Instagram, and Threads, all that social media garbage for the latest updates. That was Devin, and I'm Christian, signing off. And remember, life is like a movie, so go out there and make it a blockbuster.
Peace.
To me, my X-Men.